it is Auburn. It's not like that's the
session, which is tax. And I'm going to start with a question, the $1 million question, why we are paying tax. I get that question every single day, why we have to pay tax. So I just hate it as an investment in Australia, because no one answered my question. I'm going to ask that question again. How many of you have more than 100K saving in your bank account?
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to kidnap this guy. Where did he park your car?
Somewhere far away.
Somewhere far away, okay. All right, so investment in Australia, and of course, when we work in Australia, regardless we work in tax or we work in, we run a business, the question is how we can minimize the tax. And I have to speak in Dari. You guys want me to speak in Dari or speak in English?
English.
English?
English.
And whichever part, I'll try to speak very slow, and whichever part you don't get me, please stop me and I'll explain it back in Dari. So investment, I have to go live. Oh my God, my friends and clients are gonna kill me because they have been asking to go live, and in my session, I'm not live. Okay, let's go live. Live videos, loading.
TikTok or Instagram?
I put it on Facebook, and through Facebook I downloaded it in TikTok. Okay. I think it's live now. Yeah, okay. All right. To start from very basic, in Australia, of course, we work under two categories, which is running a business through an avian and working as a tax file member. And of course, majority of the client or majority of audience here today is running a business. And the question I always get, how can I minimize my tax? How can I, they're not asking, they're not using the word minimizing, they're saying, how can I not pay tax? Okay, I always get that, how can I not pay tax? The answer is you cannot stop, or you cannot say, I don't want to pay tax. We all have to pay tax. Tax is actually the fees we are paying to live in a nice country like Australia. So get that off your mind, saying I don't want to pay tax. So that's actually a fees we are paying to live a comfortable life in Australia. Investment, so I put the investment as a tax deduction, and residential, is it a tax deduction? A lot of people ask me a question. Car purchase, is it a tax deduction? And capital gain tax, and I know it's a favorite to everyone. And sole trader and companies. Let's start with investment properties, which is a tax deduction. The answer is yes, investment property is a tax deduction, because the mortgage you're paying on an investment property, that is reducing your taxes. And a lot of time, when a client comes to the office to do a tax return, they tell me, I'm paying $3,000 included in my tax return because that's how much I'm paying every month. Please bear in mind, the $3,000, $4,000, $6,000, or $7,000 you're paying every month, you cannot include that in your tax return, because that is, a portion of that is a mortgage and a portion of that goes to your capital, the actual value of the property. So you need to, when you're doing your tax return, you need to have a proper bank statement or a summary of the investment only, the mortgage only, that how much interest you have paid. That portion of the mortgage you have paid is actually get included in your tax return, not the whole figure. Does it make sense? Like if you pay $8,000, out of 8,000 only 6,000 might be the mortgage, and the remaining could be, it's just an example, portion will be different. The remaining might go against the capital, the value of the property. So you need to identify the mortgage part of it included in your tax return. And
Sorry, quickly.
Yeah.
But the amount that you, besides you paying your interest, the interest considered as an expense, but the other part can be as an investment.
no, do you pay, suppose you pay 8,000, out of 8,000, 6,000 is the mortgage, and 2,000 is not the mortgage, that's the value of the property.
Yes.
So the value of the property comes as a deduction in a different format, which is depreciation of the building. So you put that separately.
Okay, but it doesn't consider as an investment.
doesn't
For example,
consider-
my mortgage that I have to pay is 5,000, and I
Yeah.
double up that one for 10,000,
Yeah.
and I pay extra 5,000 on top of that to pay the mortgage, the investment quicker.
Yeah.
In that way, the 5,000, whatever is the interest that goes under expense, but the rest, the capital, as you say, doesn't consider as an investment to avoid paying
Okay.
tax.
So you are voluntarily paying extra 5,000 to
Like
the
a
bank.
salary
You're
sacrifice.
paying, you can't call it salary
No,
sacrifice,
yes,
but you're voluntarily
similar, yeah,
paying an extra 5,000 to reduce the loan amount.
Mhm.
But in your head, you're saying, I paid 5,000 extra for the mortgage. Not necessarily bank will consider the whole extra 5,000 as a mortgage payment. Okay, so that's why at the end of the financial year, you need to get your bank statement to see how much of that 10,000 that you paid went against your mortgage and how much went against the capital price of the property.
Correct.
Okay, so based on the capital price of the property, that's why when we do tax return, we get two statements from everyone.
Mhm.
One is the real estate statement, which shows how much your income is,
Mhm.
which the real estate gentleman is right here, then they will give us the paper, and then we again get you a statement from how much interest you paid for the property,
That's correct.
just the interest. Okay? We have like all our Afghan clients مقابل افغان تو توکلی است، توکلی کارو میکنیم، برو بزن 10,000، برو بزن 8,000، برو بزن. It's not like برو بزن. So you have to give me the statement to define how much is the mortgage and how much is actually the capital price.
After
Yeah.
لیف بپرسی بود. باید از اینکه پول مندازید مثلا زیاد پول مندازین شما سر اینوستمنت. اینوستمنت میگن تکس
Investment که میگیم investment is the whole
سرمایه‌گذاری
building.
میکنین نه؟
Investment is the whole building. The whole
Right.
property is called investment.
درست. وقتی که سرمایه گذاری میکنین سر یک خانه،
بله.
او هنوز به حساب پروفیتبل نیست تا که نفروشی، پروفیتش معلوم نیست نه؟
آها.
کانسیدر میشه به حساب سرمایه یا اینوستمنت. یعنی ما مثلا فرض مثال ما به خاطر که عاید خود کم نشان بدم، ما پول مندازم سر اینوستمنت پراپرتی خود که تکس ندم. امکان داره؟
این سوال تمام نگرفتم. کدام پول رسید؟
منظورش است که زودتر بخواه که پیمنت خود زیادتر کنه که در اینکمش کم پیسه باشه که تکس کم بده یا هیچ تکس نده.
همین رو بیشتر جواب درست کنه. وقتی که در لیز اگریمنت وقتی لون اگریمنت که میگیری در اگریمنت نشست که معاملات تو باید 5,000 بدی. That's clear. اما 5,000 که میدی 4,000ش اینترست میدی، 1,000ش مثلا میگم 1,000ش هست ولی خانه، پرایس خود ولی خانه شد 5,000 تکمیل. بر علاوه 5,000 آقای سعید میگم من 5,000 اضافه پرداخت میکنم. من جواب برشان دادم تو 5,000 اضافه پرداخت میکنه. ذهنیت سعید جان است که 5,000 من صرف بر روی مورگیج بر روی اینترست انداختم.
نه سر اینترست نه. به قیمت خانه.
یا اینترست
یا
ذهن خودت یا
whatever
اینترست
is
باشه
called.
یا قیمت خانه باشه خودت دیترماین نمیکنی. او 5,000 سر بالانس میره. او رو بانک تصمیم میگیره که 5,000 اضافه خودت چقدر شده روی ولیو خانه بندازم و چقدر شده روی اینترست بندازم.
خب بعد از اینکه اینا این کار کردن آیدنتیفای کردن.
وقتی که در یک ماه 10,000 پرداخت شد. در ذهنیت اینا کسی 5,000 اضافه شاید در این خانه انداخته باشه در این مورگیج. It's not important که چی فکر میکنه که در کجا آورن. For us it's important که استیتمنت که میگیریم اما 10,000 شو تقسیم بندی شده. Okay? That's it. But the whole, when you say investment, the whole building is investment. The
وقبل
whole
شما
property is
درست
investment.
عطف معي است که tax office چه قسم را consider میکنه؟
Tax office is not considering. I consider it based on what I see in the paper.
خب شما من ایست همی چیز
Yeah.
tax agent
آه.
شما چی consider میکنین؟ اون 5,000
گفتم جواب سوال خود بر دادم که استیتمنت بانک بر من میدی من میبینی که چی تقسیم بندی کرده بر اساس از او من محاسبه خودم میکنم و تکس office میکنم. بر اساس چیزی که استیتمنت از بانک بر من حوال میشه. از این خاطر من گفتم من توکلی حرف خودت
نه من توکلیش نمیکنم.
من
اینه
جنرال میگم.
فکر کنین که امیره فکر کنین که اونا ایدنتیفای کردن که اینی مثلا گرفتن تنها اینترست گرفتن فرض کنیم 2,000 ش اینترست 8,000 دیگه اسی آیا من ایس سرمایه در نظر گرفته میشه؟
چرا نمیشه؟ گفتم اون بر اساس دیپریشیشن پراپرتی میه پس بین‌المللی مصرف میه بله. That's okay. پس میاد حساب فارسی میگم ولی انگلیسی کلمه Okay, investment property. So investment property is 100% tax deduction regardless. And we have a lot of cases like if you have one property in Australia, you are only exempt not to pay tax for one property. And if a mistake, today I'm not going to define any rules here. I'm not here to define any rules. I'm here just to talk on the key points of what has happened, whether the mistake has been delivered, and what you should do and what you should not do. If you're buying one property, you have been living on the property for 10 years, as you mentioned earlier. You have one property, you have lived for 10 years. And that property, because you don't have any other property, is exempted from CGT because you have been living on that property. You bought a second property is investment. Second property is investment. Now, let's say you buy a second property is not investment. Okay, we have a lot of scenarios. I'm tired and sick of living in my units. I want to buy a new property. My new property is a big house. I want to move on that property. The question someone asked me earlier, that because I'm moving to the new property, but this property that I'm leaving for 10 years is my residential property, what will happen? I'm going to explain this very slowly because it's easy and complicated at the same time. What you need to do here is, first of all, the property that you're buying, $1 million, $2 million, it's big money. The property you're living for 10 years is paid off. You need to cash out from this property, put this in the loan, take the money, put it on the new property, because the new property you cannot use it because you're living in it as a residential. Leave on the second one. Try to reduce the loan on the residential as much as you can. If you cash out from property A, the property A will go in the loan, do the valuation in the market, do the renovations, clean up, paint, do whatever, put this in the rent. What people does, this is paid off, they put it on the rent. The biggest mistake, they move from this 10 years old house to the new house, they get a loan of 2 million in the new house, they live in the new house, they pay mortgages on the new house, they cannot claim it because it's residential. The old property, they're renting it, it does not have any loan. That is actually an extra income coming on top of their tax return, and their tax is quite high. Because against that, they do not have any mortgages. Did you guys get my point?
But if اگر در مخانه که پیاف کردی هستی وجه باشی ایجا که انوستمنت نو میخری ایره که رند بدی
خوب اینوستمنت هست خوب است.
خانه
که 10 سال 6 میخوایم 5 سال دیگه میشینیم خانه جدید میخوایم اینوستمنت that's fine it's
خب دو باید می تاکس دیدکت
Of course that's because it's investment you pay
صحیح شده افهمیدم.
What I'm trying to explain, a lot of people are saying I'm tired and sick of living in this house. I want to buy a new house as a new property because it's beautiful. They go there. They're wearing a lot of mortgage on the new one, but they cannot claim it. At the same time, the biggest mistake, that property has a lot of income as a rent income, but has no expenses.
To pay
Do
tax.
you need to change the loan? Like for example, when you buy the new house, you will borrow the money as an investment property, right? And then you moved in it. And so if you moved into the investment property and give your residential property or treat it as an investment, is that okay by the government or by the bank? Because you actually paying the mortgage on the investment.
What do you mean? The new one that you're moving, are you saying that's investment?
Yeah.
But you said you're moving on that one, so that can't be investment because you're moving in it.
So we have to tell the bank that I'm
Moving,
moving
yeah,
to that,
yeah.
but that loan should be not investment loan.
Yeah, that's right. So
Okay.
there's two stages, correct me, these are the bank people, so correct me the bank people if I'm correct, but I believe I am, but just correct me. When you're putting an application in the bank,
Yeah.
and the application is considered as an investment
Yeah.
application,
Yeah.
later on once everything is done and dusted, you change your mind.
Mhm.
And you want to go and live in it. No one can tell you not to do it, right? You carry on the same application. There's no need to change anything, correct? Because you carry on living in it because you change your mind. A lot of people do that just for the purpose of showing that they can pay it. They put an application as an investment, but then they change their mind to live in it. There is nothing wrong with that because you want to show that this property generates a lot of income, so you can have an approval for it. That's a secret, actually. I shouldn't say that on the live
I was
video,
gonna
but
say,
yeah.
it's
Yeah. But anyway, it's not my, yeah, it's all George's fault.
You move from the first to the second.
Yeah.
Once you move into that property.
Yeah,
The first one that you live for 10 years.
yeah,
After you move into the new one.
Yeah.
When you sell it, do you have to still pay tax on it?
on the 10 years, no.
You're
On
not
the
gonna
10
pay
years,
any
no.
The first 6 years.
Even when
No,
you
no.
move to the second property,
Yeah.
the first property you give it to the rent
Yeah,
for a couple years,
Yeah.
and then you sell it. Maybe there's tax on it.
okay. I'm gonna come back to what I was explaining here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna make it very slow so everyone understands.
میشه
I lived
ببخشید،
در
میشه
فارسی
در
بگیم؟
فارسی
اوکی،
بگیم،
اوکی،
شاید
سعید.
کلی
من
گفتم.
مثلا 10 سال در آپارتمان خود زندگی کردم. بعد از 10 سال خسته شدم این آپارتمان رو دیگه زندگی نمیکنم، میخوام یک خانه لکژری بخرم. میرم خانه لکژری $2 میلیون خانه لکژری میخرم. اوکی؟ الان مشکل دیگه چی است؟ این آپارتمانی که من زندگی میکردم پیاف شده پولش. هیچ من از بانک قرضدار نیستم. اوکی؟ منتها من $2 میلیون قرض گرفتم خانه نو میخرم. الان خانه نو که من $2 میلیون قرض دارم، باید این مورگیجش پی کنم. و مورگیجش که من پی میکنم از تکس خودی کشیدن نمیتونم. الان من چی میکنم؟ چون خانه پیاف است، یعنی خانه در بانک is money. پیسه است
Can I
دیگه.
explain a strategy? That
Huh?
might make, can I explain
Yeah.
it?
I will explain this in Farsi and then we come and explain the
Okay,
strategy.
sure.
Yeah. الان من چی میکنم؟ این خانه که پیاف شده بانک میگم این آپارتمان است، من 10 سال زندگی کردم در مارکت والی آپارتمان من 8 لک. من نمیره کش اوت میخوایم. بانک چی میکنه؟ از این 8 لک من شاید 5 لک بر من بده. من 5 لک از این میگیرم در پراپرتی که جدیدن خریدم زندگی میکنم نه میندازم.
Oh, it means you didn't get your contract you got still with the bank.
Of course I'm with the bank. باز الان من چی میشه؟ در پیش بانک من 2 دونه لون دارم. یکی لونی که خانه پیاف خود پیسیش کشیدم.
او خلاص شده.
نه خلاص نشد. نه خلاص نشد. من چی گفتم؟ خانم خلاص است. ما کش اوت یعنی از این خانه خلاص شده 5 لک کشیدم. یک تا لون در این خانم من، یک لون دیگه که زندگی میکنیم این خاص. اوکی؟ الان من چی میگم وقتی تاکسی رو خودم میکنم یعنی 5 لکی که از خانه 10 ساله خود کشیدم این عنوانی اینوستمنت پراپرتی میره. از نقطه‌ای که من پولش کشیدم. وقتی سودا میکنم این آپارتمانم سوال آقای دیوید این وقتی که من سودا میکنم از نقطه‌ای که پول کشیدم از نقطه‌ای که کرایه دادم رینوویت کردم مارکت والیش پیدا کردم از این نقطه به بعد من سرش تکس میدم به خاطر که از این نقطه به بعد من در خانه جدید رفتم و دولت آفیس اف استیت ریونیو رو گفتم که این خانه جدید من این خانه $2 میلیون است من این خانه دیگه خود اینوستمنت پراپرتی تبدیل کردم.
Okay. There is a bit of challenge. You are after 2 years rent on the old house. You
Yeah.
are going to sell it.
Doesn't matter, I only pay tax CGT on 2 years.
Okay, whatever. And then how they want to calculate it? Example, the valuation not for 10 years, just from the.
That's what I said. I do the valuation for the property before I rent it.
Yeah.
So when I'm selling it out after 2 years, after 2 years my property will be 900K, but when I did the valuation it was 800K. So my profit is only 100K for those 2 years.
So you need to pay 30% of that 100.
No 100 on a $50,000 because I'm exempted. For the rest of the $50,000, a calculation I'll tell you separately because it's, you get exempted for 50%. What's your new strategy for that?
I'll explain something that maybe this is like the legal way of doing this.
Are you telling me?
No, it's not legal. I mean, like I'm trying to find the right word.
The halal.
The halal way. So let's say this is a house that you live in right now, okay? You've lived there for 10, 15 years and you've paid it off, there's no debt on it, okay? And now you're like, all right, I want to buy another house, okay? And I want to use, I don't want any owner-occupied debt. Why I don't want that? Because that debt is not tax deductible, right? So it's dead money that you're paying, like I said before. So what you do in this situation is this house that you've paid off, you sell it. Okay, now you've got all this money. Then you go and find, or you've already found your new house. You buy it with cash that you've used from here. Okay, this new house now, you own it and there's no loan on it, right? But you're like, no, I still want an investment property. So what do? You pull the equity out of here as investment debt, and then you buy the investment property. Okay, that's the halal way to do this without getting into any issues with the tax office. Does that make sense? What I explained?
Yeah, like question for you.
Yes.
Property A, property B, property C.
Yeah.
Okay? So you said property A, you lived for 10 years, you sold it, there is no tax, obviously there's no tax because by the time you sell it, there is another property in your name,
Yeah.
right? So that's sold out. You buy property B. You just mentioned on the property B because I took the property A money and put it in property B.
Yep.
And then this property B I'm leaving and I want to take the money out and buy property C.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, as a tax advisor, I never advise anyone to sell it. Okay?
Well, I'm not a tax agent. So I'm not.
Yeah,
It's
so
not my thing.
I don't advise a client to sell it. I advise the client to buy it. The more you buy, a lot of question is asked, this guy makes a lot of money, they pay $0. Why those big people are paying $0? Because they have a lot of negative gear in property. You pay one, take the equity to the second one, second to the third one. So I'm not advising anyone to sell it, I'm advising everyone to buy it. Okay, so you are paying $30,000, $40,000 tax. If you're working on a TFN, you're paying high taxes. The only way you can reduce that by having more investment properties. But I want to find out your point. Why you advise my client to sell the first, and what's the point?
I'll explain why. So, back to the halal thing.
I'm trying to prove him haram.
Okay.
So why you
So
want
I'll
them to
explain why.
sell?
So when banks base
Yeah.
the purpose. So banks base the purpose of the funds based on what you're doing with the money, right? So let's say your strategy. We have property A that I live in for 10 years, and now I want to buy property B, but I don't want to sell property A, but I don't want any non-tax deductible debt. So Tara's strategy is we borrow, or we put all the investment debt against the property that I'm going to be renting, and then minimize the non-tax deductible debt as much as possible on the new house that I'm moving into, correct?
Yeah.
That's actually,
Do you want to have a seat?
look, essentially the
Okay,
bank,
so make it simple. He's advising to sell your 10 years old apartment, get the money, put it to the second one. To make it very simple, that's what he's saying, right? Sell the property A, take the money, and go buy the second one, put it in the second one, and take it from second one, buy the third one.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, if you need that money, why you have to sell property? Because the bank is already giving you money against that.
You're not allowed.
You're allowed to cash out. I did
think-
in my property. I did it right now, I did it in my property.
I think you pay more interest if you have a couple of properties in the same time.
Yeah.
your expense is not that much, but your interest is more. The more you take, when you sell the property and then reduce the amount of borrow, you're paying less interest.
But I don't
In
want
that
to pay
way-
less interest. Why I have to pay less interest? If I pay less interest,
If
I
you-
pay high taxes. The
But,
reason
but
you're having
but
that.
there's a
Yeah.
question. Your interest that you're paying is higher than your tax that you're paying. That's you have to be
No,
mindful
no,
of that.
Tax, you're paying 40%.
No.
Yes, you're paying 60%.
What you pay,
Uh,
it depends how much is the price of the money that you borrow. The more you borrow more, and your 40% of your income is maybe less than the interest that you're paying for the borrowing money.
And then also good concept, the interest will always reduce the taxes. The
Yeah.
tax is always higher.
No, it's $1 million,
If we sell that
and your
It's
income
still-
is not
it's
$1 million
still-
a year,
No,
for
no, no.
example.
But it's still $1 million. You pay 6%
Yeah.
loan,
If we sell
home
it,
loan.
it's
But
under the
on the
investment
tax,
house.
you pay 40, 35,
If
40%.
we sell under investment
That's
house,
too much.
taxes too much.
Sorry, say that again?
I think the reason George said it's better to sell it.
Yeah, George's recommendation was to sell the property A, get the money, buy property B.
Yeah.
And from property B, take a portion of it and buy property C. That's what George proposed.
You still have two
Yeah.
houses. Either
Yeah,
way you do
yeah,
it.
yeah.
If we sell on that time before we put that one on the investment property, we don't need to pay tax, capital tax.
Yeah, what George was advising, if you sell property A, there is no tax on property A.
Yeah, if you-
That's completely right. Yeah, that's completely right. Yeah.
So that's a good idea. That's a good idea to sell it. Because there's no tax. If you
But that's a personal option. All right, I need to move on, but what I'm saying is, that's a personal option. If you want to sell property A, of course, because property A you have lived for 10 years, that's your residential property. What George was saying is right as well, because when you're selling it, the time you're selling, you don't have another property. Of course, you're not paying tax on that property because it's a residential property. You wait a little bit, you take the money, you hang around with that money, and then you buy property B. And you live in property B, and because property has a lot of equity from the sale of the first property, then you buy property C. I'm not saying George is wrong. George is right. That's a strategy he wants to implement it. But I, as a tax advisor, my strategy is also right. So you have two options to choose. George option is an option for people to take it if they don't want to have more property. But my advice as a tax advisor is, I don't want my client to sell properties. I'm saying if you need money, you rather cash out from property A. Of course, George is right, because George is saying you will not 100% get the cash out from that property. Is that correct, George?
It's more of like the bank. The bank utilizes they'll deem the debt like tax deductible or not tax deductible based on what you're doing with that money,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm buying an investment property
Yeah.
and that money is for an investment property, that's where the debt needs to sit, right? It needs to sit against what I'm doing with it. Your strategy isn't incorrect, but regardless whether I do it my way or your way,
Yeah.
we're still going to end up with two properties.
That's right. No, 3 properties. My way will be 3
No,
properties.
yours is two properties.
I will keep my
Because
first
you're
one.
going from one to second,
Yeah,
correct?
but
I'm
then
going
the
from
second
to second
one,
as
yeah,
well.
if I keep my property A, I'm gonna go for property B. I take the money and buy.
Oh, you can do it that
property-
way as well.
Yeah, and then I will wait for property B to have a bit of equity and take it out by property C.
Yeah.
Eventually, yes, you will end up with a
With
lot.
3 each.
It really depends who wants to do which way.
It depends on.
Yeah, there is
If
no
you can
wrong
handle
answer
it,
to this. There is no wrong answer.
It depends on your income,
Yeah.
everyone different.
Yeah, that's
If
right,
you got
that's
a
right.
good
Yeah.
income, you can keep
Yeah.
your first one.
Yeah.
That was-
If you want to sell your first
Correct,
one, you have
correct.
to pay 2-3%
Yeah.
to Jason, so he can sell it.
Yeah.
And then next time, you have to go back to George to get the
Yeah.
loan, you have to pay to
Exactly.
him
So
again.
regardless of what you guys do, you will come to
Oh,
me,
wait,
to
wait,
George and to Jason.
I don't try.
All right, okay, let's move on because
Can I
Jason
ask
has to
one
give
thing?
his presentation, yes.
Before you go, so
Yeah.
with the investment property before,
Yeah,
once you sell that property, you pay the CGT.
yeah.
But I think now the tax office want that CGT, even if you don't sell that property, you have to pay a CGT every
That's, I know
time.
what you're talking about, yeah. It hasn't come into effect yet, but they're gonna, I think you might know this.
Yeah, they're talking, yeah, it's
They're
not
talking
information,
about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not
What is it
information.
that?
I can't give information because they haven't finalized it yet.
They're
So it's
potentially
not
saying
finalized
maybe
yet.
on expected
Yeah.
gains,
That's right.
they're gonna tax you. They haven't even got it yet.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
I'm not allowed to talk about it because it's not approved yet.
It's not approved yet, yeah.
All right, so residential, me and George already covered what's the invested property and what's residential property. So car purchase, of course, we also touch on car purchase because George had a great idea of, taking the cash out. And I said, if you are working on a tax file number, if you buy a car, you can't include it in your tax return. So the best way for you to come to George, if you have an investment property, so George will help to get the equity from the investment property, and you can go and buy a car, and then that the loan amount will increase, and you can include that in your taxes. Sole trader and companies. A lot of time I get a question saying, I'm a sole trader, can I claim my mortgages, or can I buy investment property? Can I buy a car and claim it? Regardless of what your structure you are, even if you're a company, even if you're a sole trader, because you are holding an ABN, that you're considered as a business, and the rule in form of investment property is the same. Of course, when you buy a property against the company, it's different than buying investment property against a sole trader, because when you buy a property in your personal name, you live for 1 year, and when you're selling it, regardless of how many years after, when you're selling it, because you live for 1 year on that property, when we calculate as an accountant, we calculate your profit on the property as a CGT, you will get an exemption of the profit, 50%. You're not paying tax on that because you have lived on the property more than 1 year when you bought it on the very first time. But if it's a company, you can't. A company, you don't have any sort of exemption, or 50% exemption on the CGT, because if you sold it, if the profit is 100K, 25% tax. If it's a 20,000 profit, 25% tax. For the company, you didn't get the exemption at all. But consider one thing, if you have a big margin of profit on a property, quite big, like 500, 600, especially the developers. We don't have developer by the way here. Especially with developers, they buy the old property, demolish it, and they're reselling it. The profit on those sort of projects is quite high. They do it against the company, because if the profit is on the property is like 300, 400, 500K, which definitely is 500 plus, so you only pay 25% tax. But if you do it against your individual name, it's like 40 plus the tax rate. So it's better, depending on the structure, depending on the project, what you're doing, you need to get the right advice before you can jump into it. That depending on the profit, depending on the project, we will advise the clients whether you have to be a sole trader or a company. I think I've already jumped into the second slide. Investment properties against ABN is the same ruling. Tax file number. Unfortunately, the people who are working in tax, you cannot claim car purchase, you cannot claim a lot of expenses, because you only have a specific benchmark as a tax file number that you can claim it. The more you put expenses, the system gives us an alert saying that you're going over your benchmark, and that alert will be subject to an audit. So it's better for you. A lot of times they're saying, we get a client saying, I work on tax file number, can you do my tax return? And when I do the tax return, sorry, you can't go more than this specific threshold. You only get a $500 refund. Because the next accountant next door told me that I can get $5,000, $4,000, $3,000. They just jump to the amount they're getting back. They don't even consider that the more expenses you put, the higher risk will be for you. So you need to be very mindful of that. And once you get audited, every year, your tax will be triple time checked that you have been audited before. I myself recommend everyone to be an ABN because ABN comes as a business and you have more flexibility within your tax return rather than tax file number. Yeah, I think I've already explained the properties in the company name and the properties in his personal name. Okay, expenses you can claim. So I was just typing every expenses comes to my mind, that these are the expenses you can include in your tax return. But as I said, I have been saying in social media regularly, if your profit is quite high in 2025, come here, we give you a plan on how you have to reduce your taxes, how you can reduce your taxes. It's not this page, it's what we discussed. But George discussed what Mila John said, that if you are having a lot of profit in your pocket at the moment and the financial year 2025 is not ended yet, you need to think now. Either you can go to the properties, off the market properties for Jason, and still it's not too late. I'm pretty sure Jason and George will help you with loan applications. You need to have investment properties. The more you have investment property, the less taxes. That's why me and George and Saeed, we were talking about, I love challenges. That's how I was challenging George and John. So there is no wrong way. As I said in here, smart ideas. You have to be smart around your tax matters, regardless of which strategy you want to choose. So when George was saying 2 properties, I was like 3 properties. It really depends on your mind. Some people doesn't like to have more properties because they can't handle it. But some people wants to have, the more property you have, the less taxes you pay, because it's a negative gearing. Even if tax office audits you, there's nothing wrong in it. You have your mortgage, you have your property, this is the interest you're paying. What's wrong with that? Nothing. You have 5 properties, negative gearing. I have clients, which they are developers. When they do their taxes, they transfer all the profit from their company in their personal name. And against their personal name, they have 5, 6 negative gearing properties. Their income is quite high. Their taxes are like $1,000 or something. And when the girls are drafting the taxes, this doesn't look right. And I'm like, it does look right, because they have got a lot of negative gearing properties. They're smarter, and that's why my job as an accountant, as a tax advisor, as a business coach, I don't advise anyone to sell properties. Buy as much as you can. Because at the end of the day, you are working as an employee, you're carrying on your day. Those properties that you buy, regardless if you buy them in self-managed super funds, or you buy it through George's strategy, regardless of which strategy you choose, they are paying themselves. So each property you buy, the rent comes against the mortgage, it just carries on, it doesn't disturb you, right? It's not like a buy for a girlfriend always annoy you, so it just sits there and does whatever it does, so you just carry on your day. So I would encourage everyone to have as much negative gearing properties as possible. Now you guys can ask me a question, and these are, if you want to have a further, like I said, if you're a company, the wages to the director, the wages to the families. Business investment is a great option as well. If you have a company and a company makes a lot of profit, you can buy some investment properties against the company. And if you want to have more in details of the strategies, again, me and George can sit together, and with you, of course, so we can make some planning for you. Business investment, car purchase, and be mindful of one thing. I have clients that it's just one company, one director, they're buying 3 cars against that company. One director, one company, no contractor, 3 cars. Of course, tax office is not needed, so they're gonna ask a question. So you're one director, you have one company, and you have 1 car already. What are the other extra costs against this company? Oh, I have workers, but your like financial doesn't have any contractors. So you can't just buy your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend car against the company because you want to do a tax deduction. You can't do that. Motor vehicle insurance is a claim. Business insurance, obviously.
Excuse me, Talia.
Yes.
What's good for the business and investment property? Why that one is good?
It's good because sometimes what happens is you don't have personal, like, for example, you're a director of a company, you don't have any investment property against your name. I'm asking you to buy investment property, you're saying, oh, I have to pay child support, I don't want to buy anything against my name. That happens a lot. I don't want to have more income against my name because my kids' Centrelink will be stopped. So it means you're blocking your way only for Centrelink payments. And I get that every single day. Because of the Centrelink, I can't put anything against my name. Because of the child support, I can't put anything against my name. So you're only left with the option of a company. But your company has a lot of profits. So what are you going to do with the profit? You can't just dump the expenses there. So you need to have a legitimate investment option against your company to be able to reduce the profits within the company setting. The investment property could be, you could buy the office space. The office that I'm running, I have been on that office for almost, I think 15 years I have been on that building. I could have bought that. I've approached the real estate so many times. I said, I want to buy this property. They said, sorry, it's subject to demolition, we can't sell it. That could be a good investment against my company. So that type of investment, you can go and buy an Aldi, buy Woolies.
Do we need to have the trust account? Because if it's company, I own the company, doesn't matter.
Company has nothing to do with trust account.
No, he's afraid of, because company is an entity itself.
It's not in terms of insurance. You're saying someone come and make a false state claims against the company?
No, if the company income is still like my personal income. It's I own the whole company. It's not share or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So the tax office or the tax
Okay.
benefit things is still like account.
No, in Australia, company is a separate legal entity, and you're completely separate. You have your own tax file number. The only reason you have a separate tax file number, the company has separate tax file number, is because you two are considered separately.
Yes.
Okay?
But what he is afraid, for example, I have $1 million in my company, and then the company, something go wrong, they take the money out of the company because company is liable for that. If you have a trust account, what you can do, you put 500,000 on your trust account, and if something go wrong with the company, they only take the 500,000. They have the $5,000 in your trust. Nobody can touch it.
No, that's not right information. So what happens is, if I want to sue Freedom Finance, I'm going to sue George for encouraging my client to sell the property, right? So, so if I want to sue a company, right? A company will only come, the court will only go, this is not a legal advice because everyone is recording, but this is the general information I'm giving. So you as a director will only be liable if you know your company doesn't have money, right? There is no money in the bank account in the company, and you still go and put order for stock. Okay? Because you as a director know your account doesn't have money. You go and order some stock, and the supplier trusts you. The supplier puts an order, send all the orders to you. And you are not paying your supplier for 30 days, for 60 days, for 100 days. So the supplier comes to sue the company, right? If supplier comes to sue the company, then you will be in question as a director. Then the court will come. They will question you and your personal properties. Okay? Because if they look at the company, if the company has its money, they're not going to come to you. They will take the money and pay the supplier. But because you are in breach of your duty of care, that's where you get approached. That's where your personal assets will come into question. But if you want to secure your personal assets, that's completely a different structure. You need to have a separate trust. But I'm going to mention this trust. A lot of people heard about trust. They don't know the usage of trust. If you're a single person, they form a trust, but the trust, hang on a sec, which trust? Okay, which trust? Oh, it's a family trust. Who did this for you? Oh, my old accountant. How many people are in the family? Just myself. Then why you have a trust? Family trust is only usable for two reasons. Tax saving, if you're operating under the trust account, and you have family member of 5 or 6, and all of them are over 18. Because the profit of the trust gets distributed against every individual in the trust, and that's how it will be our tax minimization. But if it's just you, George, and forming a trust, it's just keep coming to George and finding the George.
Well, it's for asset protection as well, right?
Yeah. So if it's
Yeah,
one
that's
person,
it.
that's what I said, two reasons. One is tax, one is assets. But if it's one person, I won't recommend to have it for tax purposes. Assets protection, yes. Assets protection, again, you will buy like it's close to SMSF. Asset protection, yes, you will have a property, you put it against a family trust, but then who is the trustee of the trust? You have to make it a company, and the company will be shareholder of the operating company. It's so long, complicated situation, but that's the assets protection structure that you need to see separately that I have to advise you on that.
One question. اگر یک بزنسمن است مثلا قرضدار است بسیار بزنس هم ران میکنه آدم در آخر این بانکرپسی میکنه این چطور میشه بزنس هم اساسش زیاد نیست یعنی چی شخصیش سرمایه شخصیش یعنی خانه شخصیش محفوظ میباشه یا
وقتی شما میگین بانکرپت میشه
یا بانکرپت خودم اعلام میکنه اصلا نمیتونه که
بانکرپت میکنن خودش رو بانکرپت کردن نمیشه در صورتی که پراپرتی داشته باشه پراپرتی خلاص میکنه
خب یک
یکی لیکویدیشن است یکی بانکرپسی
نه بانکرپسی
بانکرپسی خودت باعث یک ایندیویدوال وقتی خودت میخوای بانکرپت کنی سوال اول از خودت پرسان میشه که آیا اسست داری یا نداری در صورتی که اسست داری بانکرپت شدن نمیتونی کلش دست میدی
نه بزنس داشته باشی
بزنس بانکرپت نمیشه بزنس لیکویدیت میشه
لیکویدیت میشه
سیستم که لیکویدیت میشه کمپانی است مثلا از تکس آفیس قرضدار هستین 1 لک
آه.
کمپانی رو میخواین لیکویدیت بسازین
آه.
کمپانی اگر شما دید کمپانی رو پی کنه نمیتونین I'm not a liquidator I'm not a
It's a
bankrupt
legal
agent
advice.
this is a general information I have to see this legally this is a general information I'm not an agent I'm not a liquidator I'm not a like you know
Legal
bankruptcy agency or agent but anyway so what happens under normal circumstances if you want to liquidate your company they will come to the director and if director have assets they will sell it and pay the supplier to the company The same thing.
Thank you. Right.
All right, next page for the
Excuse me,
expenses.
Doctor.
Yes.
So, if we get bankrupt,
Yeah.
the asset and the trust account will be safe, yeah?
It depends on the assets structure. Again, you need to see me because there's a lot of assets will be affected. There are some assets will not be affected. Trust, sorry. There are some trust will be affected. It depends on the trust because trust also has different structure. One is individual trust, one is corporate trust, one is self-managed trust, one is investment trust. It really depends.
تا چند سال مثلا نمیتونی که بعد از اینکه خود بانکرپت شد یا کمپانی یا شخص یا هر چیز چقدر وقت دیگه که
5 سال. I know what you're asking.
وقتا دیگه کم کار کنی مثلا کارگری کنی یا هر چیز دیگه کنی از او میتونن که بگیرن چیزی یا نه؟
وقتی خودتو بانکرپت میکنی اول باید پراپرتی نداشته باشی و بانکرپت به خاطر که بله من پیدا کردی من تو بانکرپت میکنم اوکی همیشه کوش وقت تکس حساب میکنه بله من پیکنه این بانکرپت میکنم باز اگه من تو بانکرپت کردم باز از هر کاری که بکنی از اول درآمدت یک چیزی تعیین میشه که من پیکنی
اصلا میگیره پول خودت رفت
من 35 اگر آسمان میره از پایت میگیرم در زمین میره از پایت
این قرضی که به بانکرپت اعلام میشه مثلا 1 میلیون دلار این تا نفر زنده هست همون
آره تا که بمونه که از بین بره اگر مرد دیگه بخشیده میشه اگر بابا جان و خانمش که اگر دو انتخاب کنه Okay, so I'm putting the different slides to see all the expenses. Superannuation page that I was saying earlier. Okay, so these are the questions. These are the list of expenses. If you guys want to take photos, please do take it. Where is it? These ones. And I said interest charges for the car, interest charges for your properties, construction workers and material, telephone bills, fuel costs, handset accessories, laptops, work usage, rent for the office, home space, utility bill, education cost, travel and accommodation.
Is that for the area?
For the businesses, yeah. Contractor payments, wages, superannuation payments, interstate accommodations. Sometimes you go for holiday. It's recording. I'm not going to say it. But interstate is tax deduction only if it's for not for concerts or sightseeing. It's just if it's a business related. Tax agent consultation fee. Make sure you pay me because it comes back to you. Legal cost, agent fees. Just to make George happy and Milad, all the fees you guys are paying for them is agent cost. Isn't it? Tax deduction, all of them.
But we won't charge you a property.
Yeah, we work for free.
Yeah, we work for free.
Investment properties, everything. Any questions? I think you guys already asked all your questions.
Land tax, please.
Yes, land tax.
Information, yeah.
Land tax, what is your question on land tax?
Yeah, land tax, like how many properties you should have it? What's the threshold on the land tax?
Land tax, how many lands you have for every land you pay tax. There is no
There is
exemption for the land.
there is a threshold,
I'm
right?
coming. First question was how many land. As many land you have, you can pay tax on it. That's the first answer. Second, based on the last information I had, correct me if anybody wants to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 500 plus as a land tax. Under 500 it doesn't.
No, that's wrong.
500 I guess. No, it's not 1 million.
I think 1,075,000.
Something like that, as I said, was last information, but there is a threshold, but I can check it for you if you want to.
Just a question, is it a federal or state government? Is it?
I think it's good. I think it's a federal.
As example,
No, it's state.
state is
Is it
it?
state?
It's like
Yeah.
every state is
For
different.
example, if you're gonna buy a land at different state,
Yeah.
should we have pay it counted together or not?
No, every state has its
Every
own
state
rule and
is-
regulations. No.
Okay.
No. That's what I said, even within New South Wales, you have 5 lands, each one of them has its own taxes.
If you're gonna buy a land in Queensland or in Victoria, or
Wherever, don't you pay CGT in every state you buy a house and sell it? So it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think Melbourne's a lot worse.
Yeah, nowadays people are very worried to buy a lot of properties in Melbourne, yeah. Alright, I think we covered most of the complicated tax. You can see some people
One
have
more
specific
question.
tax questions.
With the CGT, who does the calculation? The tax agent and the ATO, or just the ATO?
No, we calculate it.
Oh, you
We
calculate.
don't calculate it.
یک سوال دیگه درباره سوپرانویشن به کدام حالت میتونی به کدام ضرورت میتونی سوپرانویشن استفاده کنی؟
بکشی سوپر دام؟ اوکی.
امی خود سوپرانیمیشن کمپانی رو زنگ بزنیم براتون میگه مثلا مریکو امرجنسی میتونی بکشی در زیر یگان دفعه مثلا خود که زیادتر پیسه انداختی میتونی اون پیسه رو پس بکشی and the streaming services مثلا یک کس فالت کرد پیسه کار داری ازش میتونی و خود سوپرانیمیشن ریتیل فاند هر چیزی که امضا کرد در اونجا براتون میگه که under what circumstances میتونی بکشی
یکی medicals، یکی financial difficulties، و یکی debtors.
خلاصه هر فرم ما باید دقیق میخوانی باید استفاده
اول هم
How about with the people who take out your superannuation and they charge you like 6 to 14%?
Sir?
They take out your superannuation now,
Yeah.
and they charge you 6 to 14%.
Do you mean the solicitors?
No, it's like some people they do it.
Some people.
Yeah.
Is this the halal or something?
It's not the halal.
No, I think it's the agents that's charging, isn't it? I never heard of that. Superannuation, there shouldn't be any charges into it.
Yeah, but some
There
people,
are
they take out-
agencies,
That's what I
there
said,
are
like
agencies,
agents who is doing
yeah,
that
they're
for you.
doing
Yeah,
and
the
they
agents
charge.
Uh,
are charging a percentage.
Yeah, so is there any punishment for them? Like,
No, it's legal.
No, because that's a personal choice you make to pay them.
no, I mean, because they're not allowed to take it out,
No,
right?
there's no right or wrong. If you went to an agent, you're saying, hey agent, I will pay you. Can you help me to take out super? They will say, I'll charge 2%, you accept it. So how is that wrong? Because you accept it.
This last time the government announced during the COVID, up to 10,000 you can.
But that's different.
Yeah.
That's
After
different,
that,
yeah.
you can't.
Even now, you can withdraw super under those 3 circumstances up to 10,000 in 1 financial year.
Even then, I wouldn't recommend it. The only reason is that they're, sorry, I want to just so people see. They are cracking down on that as well. So all those people who do take out 6,000 to up to 10,000 during COVID, they're cracking down on that, and they're actually finding the people who've done it, and they're going to get it back one way or the other. All right. In terms of how you can actually take your super out, like I said, medical emergency is the number one sort of key thing. Second thing is hardship. If you actually find going through any sort of actual, not financial hardship, but actual physical hardship, and you need that money back. So whether, for example, you've lost a leg, you need something, you need funds for medical bills and stuff, that'll actually help you out.
Is it tax reduction, this super money?
Payment, yes.
And,
If you pay more than just go
Payment,
for taxes?
yes.
yeah. So if you salary
But it's like
sacrifice,
taxes, no.
yeah,
This is a cap though, right?
yeah, there is a cap for salary sacrifice.
No, like it's 11%, if you pay like 50%, because not pay tax, put in the super.
اگه 10,000 بکشی دونیم از آن تکس خود دولت دوام میدهست کنی. Against 10,000 you pay 2,500 tax. Yeah.
The threshold is 30,000 per year. That's including
I think I've finished my
contribution
tax
as well.
part.
You just want to have another quick break, just because I've more food in you.
یا گپ میزنیم که مثلا خانه اول باشه، خانه دوم باشه، خانه سمسر مجموعاً پروپرتی هست که میشه. بخش دومش بخش لون می باشه، مثلا لون میگیرین از خانه قرض میگیرین به شکل شرایط از کدام شرایط. و بخش سومشون بخش تکس است. اولیدی ماندن بخش تکس است که سوالای تکس، پروپرتی ها، تکس ریترن، تکس سیوینگ، هیچ کس هم بخواد تکس بده. $1 million question why we are paying tax. سر موضوع تکس گپ میزنیم که بگم کلی دوست داره که بفهمه. تنها یک ماه و چند روز مانده در ختم سال مالی سر تکس گپ میزنیم. و بخش آخرش هم بخش پروپرتی هست که ریل استیت آقای جیسن است که سر پروپرتی هایی که اینا لستینگ میشه داره سر صحبت میکنم و هر کسی که علاقمند است که بسا پروپرتی رو بخرن 10% به اون پروپرتی که انتخاب میکنین دسکان میکنه correct me if I'm wrong, right? You can only correct me because I can't speak my language, right? Alright, so بازم خوش آمدین. ما آقای جورج میگم که بیاین و بخش پرزنتیشن داشته کنیم. جورج, you want to come and start your part? Thank you. Are we standing somewhere here in case?
I'm George. I'm one of the mortgage brokers at Freedom Finance Services. Before we kick things off, I just want to reiterate where the fire exit is. So if you just go out to the left, and you turn right, and go left, and go down the stairs, and go left, you go out the window, and then okay. Just go that way, then down the stairs, and out the front. That's the fire exit, whatever. Phones, we appreciate if they're on silent or airplane mode, switch them off, whatever it may be. That's pretty much it. So we've got myself, Tahara, our business partner Malad, and one of our real estate partners, Jason. We're going to be doing a few presentations covering different topics that might be of interest to you. And we'll also be having Q&As at the end of each topic to obviously answer any questions that you guys have, maybe something we missed or we can elaborate a bit more on. I'm going to touch on some of the government schemes and help you guys navigate through them. So it might not be relevant to you. You probably might already own property, but you might know someone that is trying to get into the property market. And these schemes that the government are offering can definitely be utilised, and Malad and myself can assist with that. So I'll touch on the first one, which is the 5% deposit scheme. So there is a misconception, or there's a myth. It's probably an old school thing because these things went around 20 years ago, where you needed a 20% deposit to buy a home. Okay. Now in this day and age, it's very hard to find a property in Sydney for less than $1 million. And not everyone has $200,000 plus stamp duty and all these other costs sitting in a bank account ready to go, okay? So what the government has done is they're throwing money at you, okay? So you can get into a $900,000 property with just 5% of its value and nothing else. So no lender's mortgage insurance and no stamp duty. Now, I'll quickly just touch on what lender's mortgage insurance actually is, okay? Now you think insurance, you're like, okay, so if my house burns down, then someone's going to pay me out and I'm going to get my money back. Well, lender's mortgage insurance isn't for you, it's actually for the bank. So lender's mortgage insurance, you have to pay it if you borrow more than 80% of the value of the property. And as I said, that covers the bank's asset, not yours. So if it burns down, they get their money and you're left with whatever your insurance is covering on your property, okay? So essentially this pulls that element out and you don't actually have to pay for it, the government does. So for example, if you find a $1 million house, you can get into that house with just $50,000. So if you do have kids and they're trying to buy their first home and you want to gift them a deposit, you only need to give them $50,000 and they can service the rest, okay? This is just some of the eligibility of that scheme. So there are some income caps that you can see here. So if you're a single applicant, you're trying to get and use this scheme, the max cap at the moment is $125,000. Now you think, all right, $125,000, how much are they going to get me? Probably not much right now, but because Albanese got re-elected, in 2026, that cap is going to be lifted. So you can earn $200,000, $300,000, whatever it is, as a single applicant, and that will be accepted starting next year. So that you can sort of disregard that for now. If you do have someone that is interested, you can still utilise it, doesn't really matter. And the next one, which might not be relevant to anyone in here, but it might be relevant to someone you may know, is the 2% deposit scheme, okay? So this scheme is designed for single parents or a single guardian that is also trying to find a property. They can get in with just 2% and the government will cover the rest, okay? So 2% isn't much, right? So the whole 20% deposit misconception is out the window. If you know someone that fits this criteria, you're more than welcome to share this with them. Now these are all schemes that are out there, but I feel like there's an education piece missing. Okay, you see it in the news, you know, you might hear about it, but I feel like the whole 20% is still lingering around and everyone needs 20% to buy a first home when you don't need it anymore. This is just some of the eligibility criteria. Yes?
Is it okay if we ask questions when you're talking?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Just quickly about the mortgage insurance.
Yep.
I just missed when you explained earlier. When you say, because normally you don't pay any mortgage insurance if you go with less than 20%. Is that what you're saying?
If you get 20% or more of a deposit, you don't pay lender's mortgage.
But if you have it only 5%, you still pay mortgage insurance.
No, the government covers it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. So it's good you asked that question because I do like that. The whole insurance word, as I said, you think it's covering you, but you're going to pay that for the bank.
Yeah,
on
it's
top of that,
just for the borrowing money. That
Correct.
insurance is for the borrowing money.
Yes.
That you're borrowing from the
From
bank.
the bank.
In case if you're not able to pay,
or if
the
the house
insurance
gets
will
burned
pay.
down, for example,
Yeah.
then they get their money back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have to pay your home and contents insurance.
That's a
And
different
that's
thing.
a
Yeah.
totally different cost. Yeah. So yeah, with the eligibility criteria for the single parent and the 5%, it's still the same, but this, as of 2026, will also increase as well. Now this is another Help to Buy scheme. This is a really good one, and I feel there's a bit of a stigma around this. You know, a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't want the government owning any equity in my property, right? But at the same time, you know, you and your wife, you might be newly married, or you're soon to get married, you're looking to buy your first home, and you're like, oh honey, we don't have enough money to buy the house, let's just work a bit longer and save a bit more money. Well, if you still have that mentality now, you're not going to save money at the same rate that the property is going up in value, okay? So what I mean by that is your income levels are not going to increase at the same rate that property you might be interested in 2 or 3 years' time is going to stay at that same value. It's going to increase more than what you can afford, right? So it's not time or timing the market, it's time in the market. And what I mean by that is the first home you might buy might not be, and probably will not be, your forever home. Okay, so you can't look at, oh, this is my dream home, I want it right now, it's $2 million. But it's way out of reach and you're just going to keep renting for the next 10, 15 years. So it's time in the market, not timing the market, okay? Now, touching on this scheme, yes, the government will own 40% of a new home, okay? And 30% for an existing home, and all you need to put in is a 2% deposit. Now, the government will not own that 40% for life. So what I mean by that is, as you know, property prices are increasing every year. So let's say you buy the home today, and in 10 years' time, it's worth, let's say, double what you purchased it for, because that's what Australian property prices are actually doing. They're actually doubling in value every 10, 15 years. Well, the advantage to that is that when it does double in value, you've just now created this thing called equity, which I'll touch on later on as well. And you can actually pay out the government and remove them off that property. So you're essentially just using them to get into the market, and then once they're not needed, and you have, I guess, the capacity to do so, you can remove them, okay? And as I said before, this is for not just single parents and whatnot. 2% deposit, the government funds the rest. This actually becomes, I believe it is still in the works at the moment, like it's still, you can still apply for it, but the capacity is going to increase next year due to Albanese being re-elected, and this is one of his promises. Whether he follows through with it, he probably will, but anyway.
So it's work as a guarantor, right? The government is a guarantor?
No, so this is not actually a guarantor, no.
So you just said that we need to pay it back to the government.
Yeah, so the government is potentially chipping in. So for example, let's say $1 million house, okay? The government is going to chip in for a new home, 40%.
Yeah.
So around 400,000, right? You put in 2%, and your loan size is, let's just say, 60%. Because the government's already funded 40, minus your 2, okay? That's all you're borrowing. So the benefit of doing it this way as well is instead of borrowing, or you taking on an $800,000 loan or a $900,000 loan, you're only borrowing $500,000, for example, and that's all your repayments are going to be based off for now, which is good for your pocket and for cash flow. Then when in 10 years' time, when your property grows in value or even doubles in value, you can increase your mortgage, pay out the government, and you have full ownership of that property. Well, technically the bank still does, but at least the government is not part owner of your property.
Can I just say that in Farsi as well?
Sure.
It's really interesting actually.
Yeah, that's fine.
You mentioned the 5% and 2%. I'm going to have a Farsi to go here.
Can you take my question as well?
Yeah.
Does the government, the equity share with government or not?
It is. This is an equity share with the government. So they're buying 40% equity of that property you're buying. So this is an equity share scheme.
Tell me a question.
And how it works if we get the equity and pay off the
That's what
government?
I'm trying to explain. Correct me if I misunderstood it, Mila. میگن که مثلا سینگل پرنس، سینگل مادر، سینگل فادر هر کسی که هست یک پروپرتی رو میخرن 1 میلیون. میگه با جای اینکه که شما مثلا 10% دپوزیت بدین بخاطر که شما سینگل پرنس هستین، شما 2% دپوزیت میدین. و بقیه‌اش دولت براتون بس دپوزیتش دولت میکنه. شما مثلا 60% شما میدین، 6 لک بانک بر شما قرضه میده. چون بقیه‌اش دولت تاپ اپ میکنه بخاطر که شما سینگل پرنس هستین. وقتی که شما مثلا مورگیج خود پی میکنین، یعنی همین قسمت 6 لک که شما پی میکنین، قسمت 6 لک هم تکمیل شد، بانک پی آف کردین، صرف در لون شما بخش گورنمنت میمونه. بخش گورنمنت هم 40% است. باز اینا 40% شما چی میگن؟ تا زمانی که شما مو 60% تکمیل بکنین ولی خانه‌تون بلند میره. شاید 5 سال در بگیره، 6 سال، 7 سال. تا اون زمان مثلا شما ایکویتی خانه بلند میره ولی خانه بلند میره اون بخش ایکویتی شاید خانه شما 5 لک خریده باشین، دو بخش شاید شده باشه 7 لک. یعنی در خود خانه شما 2 لک در اونجا ایکویتی دارین، یعنی مارکت بالا رو به 2 لک. اینا با شما چی میگن؟ از اما ایکویتی میکشین از 2 لک، اما دولت 60% شما میکنه. حساب هکس دولت، هکس استادی واری است که دولت بطلگی میکنه. Is that correct? بله شما از ایکویتی میکشین، دولت هم میتین. Thank you so much مراقب کردی. رقم هلپ است که فعلا کل درس میخوانن. حساب وقت ما کار میکنیم هکس خود میکنیم.
ایون یک kind of share house دیگه خود گورنمنت میشه دیگه، درسته؟
Not really share. رقم هکس و هلپ است که شما مثلا یونیورسیتی میرین دولت بر شما هکس میده. شما که میرین کار میکنین باز از تکس خود مثلا دولت دوباره پس پرداخت میکنین. این یک قرضه است که دولت براتون میده.
درست. حالا من به کانفirm بپرسم، مثلا حال خونه رو میخوایم 1 میلیون. 5 سال بعد میخوایم یه کار انجام بدیم. ولوی خونه حساب میشه به روز جدید یا به همون خرید 1 میلیون حساب میشه؟
نه به مارکت والیوز دیگه. مارکت والیوز.
پس این دقیقاً شیر دیگه. شیر دولت ولیو خونه رو کلر میکنه، مثلا 1,500,000 شده به 5 سال آینده. بعد 40% گورنمنت ما این بدیم.
از اون 5 لک میدین. از اون 5 لک ولی بالا رفته میدین.
از چیزی که بالا رفته میدین.
بله از ایکویتی میدین شما رو کمک میگن. اگر کش جیب داری میدین از کشت بدین.
اوکی منظوری که ولو روزی که سهم دولت ما این بدیم حساب میشه.
بله نه سهم دولت شما وقت میدین که لون خودتون که بانک تکمیل شود.
اوکی از لحاظ پرایس چطور؟ و از لحاظ ولوی خانه چطور؟
ما دولت ولی خانه کار
نه امیر من میخوام که به شکل نمبرز بگویم که آسان شود. فرض کنم $1,000,000 ما یک خانه رو میخریم. 5% از این میشه 50,000. ما 50,000 میتونم، دولت چند میکنه؟
چون 50,000 نمیتونیم 20,000 میتونیم.
5% فرض کنیم 5% اگر 2% 5% بگیریم 50,000 ما میتونم چند میشه؟
35,000 دیگه شه دولت میده که شما مثلا امو 40%
خب از 50,000
بله شما امو دولت میگه اینا که 2% که شما میتین
بله
2% شما میتین اصلا خانه ریکوایر میکنه که شما 5% بکنید.
ها این 3% دیگه که من
که از امو فیصدی که مثلا 10% دپوزیت کنید. یعنی اصلا با پروپرتی شما باید 5% دپوزیت بکنید. 5% شما سینگل پرنس هستن پی کردن میتونید 2% میتونید بقیه‌اش دولت میده.
خب اگر من مثلا 5% مکمل بدم فرض کنم.
مکمل بدید شما زیر اسکیم نمیاد چون شما پیسه دارید.
اما 5% نه من منظور اینا بیشتر یاد کردم که با مصرف که گفتن که مارگیج اینشورنس دیگه نمیتونید در صورتی که اگر شما سابق که بود اگر 5% بود که باید مارگیج اینشورنس میدادید. باز اگر 20% می بود مورگیج اینشورنس نمیدادید. حالا که اگر من مثلا 5% داشته باشم از دولت نمیگیرم باز اون مورگیج اینشورنس نفی است یا اینکه دولت در من میده؟
دولت شما رو وقتی 5% داشته باشین که شما سر کار نداره. گفتم شما وقتی 5% میتین زیر کاتگوری اسکیم سینگل نمیاد.
دولت اینجا sorry I just want to ask the government is acting like as a mortgage insurance for you, right? If, like for example, if they cover the 40% of your mortgage, overall mortgage, it means that you start paying only the 60%.
Yep. And no net insurance.
Exactly, and the 40% of the government help is still there until you reach 10 years time and the values goes up, and then you will start paying the 40% back to the bank, not to the government, right? But the bank is insured that 40% to the. I don't think that the government paid to the bank the 40% of the
Correct.
property,
Yeah.
right?
So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be easier to understand with this share. I probably shouldn't use this example, I'll use it. Let's say you've got a husband and wife, okay? Now they're buying a house together. Now let's say the wife is gonna put in 40% of the house, and the husband is going to borrow 60%, okay? So she has a 40% share in the house, and you have a 60% share. The government is the wife, and you're the man, okay? Now, let's say in 10 years' time, it's still husband and wife, she's put in 40%, so she's owed still 40%, no matter what the value of the house is, because she put in 40% of it, right? Now, let's say this husband and wife, they split up, and she wants her share, right? So in order for the husband to pay out the wife, he needs to give her 40% value of that house, or what she put in, okay? In order for him to do that, and not everyone's gonna have $500,000 in cash laying around to just pay her. So what a lot of people do is they increase the loan, and they use that money to pay out the wife. So think of the government as the wife.
So
Does
in
that
that,
make sense?
I understood, but in that example, for example, in 3 years' time, the new government comes and says that policies no longer exist. What happened with the borrower?
So the existing people that are on the scheme,
Yeah.
they will be unaffected. But obviously the new people that want it cannot get it anymore if the government stops it.
Just one question, George, which
Yeah.
I'll ask, and then I think that gentleman has a question, right?
Sure.
So, let's say the property, the loan life is for 10 years,
Yeah.
right?
Let's say 30.
30 years, okay.
Yeah, right, that's what
So,
they're doing, yeah.
I paid my 60%,
Mm.
and I don't want the government to be out on my property any longer, right?
Yep.
So I want to pay off the government the 40%. The
Yep.
question is that 40% I'm paying the government is the fixed 40%, not
Yes,
based on the
it's
market
not
value.
growing.
Exactly right.
Correct.
Okay. دیدین اون 40% را که ما میخوایم دولت پرداخت بکنم 40% نیست که در 5 سال بعد 10 سال بعد پرداخت میکنم ولی مارکت باشه اون فیکس است 40% فیکس پرایسی که روز اول بکنه گورنمنت اگریمنت امضا کرده
سود اضافه نمیشه روش
نه سود اضافه نه ولی فقط فیکس است وقتی گورنمنت is helping you government is not investing in you خلاص سوال شما they have questions yeah.
Does the equity will be shared with the government or with wife or not?
So yeah, the equity is shared with the government when you initially buy it, yes.
No, I mean the equity. If we got the equity in after 5 years,
No.
it will be shared with the.
No. So the equity,
But
the
it's
gains,
yours.
so the gains that you make, so let's say you buy the house today for $1 million, and plus the government's chipped in 40%. In 10 years' time, let's say the house is worth $2 million, which normally is the case in Australia. The government is only, I guess, they only want their initial 40% investment. So they don't want the 40% but grown in double. It's only what they have actually put in at that time.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
Everyone's questioning about 2% scheme, and I hope you guys are not deciding they can separate it to apply for this. You're not encouraging everyone to be single. You're not encouraging everyone to be a single father or mother to apply for this scheme.
No, so this scheme, this scheme is the single parents, the one before it.
No, not this one. I
Yeah,
think
this one, the one before it.
Yeah,
that-
2%. The
I'm
whole
not
question
endorsing
is
getting the whole
the whole
scheme.
question is for 2%. That's what I'm saying. Don't get encouraged to get
Yeah, I'm
separated.
Yeah.
One question.
Yeah, sure.
It was. Well, I just forgot.
Yeah, it's okay.
When you get that, for example, you say that you pay the government because what will happen? For example, we borrow, we pay 50,000, which is 5%.
Yep.
And then we borrow 950. The 950,000, we pay interest in it.
No.
We pay interest.
I know what you borrowed.
When we borrow, when we start borrowing.
Not the 40%. that they've contributed.
That's
You
correct.
don't pay interest on that.
No, what I'm saying, because what you say that the government has a 40%
Correct.
share on
Yes.
that one.
Yeah,
The interest we pay for that loan,
yeah.
and then the government will get the 40% still when the from the 950. Is that correct?
No, no. So the government isn't. So the government isn't getting a loan for that 40%. They're just contributing it as a cash deposit.
Yes.
So you being the mortgage holder,
Mhm.
right? You are only liable to pay for the difference, which is say 560,000, for example, in a 100%
Yes.
case. So your repayments for that loan will be based off, say 500,000.
Mhm.
Your interest is also based off 500,000, not on 950, for example.
The government will pay for the
Well,
interest
yes.
on the
On the-
money they give.
On the well, because the bank is only lending you 560,000.
Yes.
The other 400,000, for example,
Is lending to the
contributed by
government.
cash from the government.
And then the government will take the value of that.
Yeah, so if you, for example, let's say you buy the house today and you don't ever pay the government back,
Mhm.
and let's say you sell the house, then once you sell that house, the government will take back their 40% and you are left with the difference.
Okay, based on the percentage of deposit, then the government will contribute
Whatever
the
they put
borrowing
in,
money.
they take it back. And then everything that's left over will either go back to whatever's left on the mortgage or the difference in equity that you made of accumulated over time.
Yes.
Okay, I have one more question.
Sure.
Two questions.
SMSF, so self-managed super funds. زیاد افراد سوپر وقتی میتن و دیگه کس میتن که برای این پیسه مستق اینوست کو برن. یعنی زیاد افراد مثلا ام در تکس کار میکنن، ام سلف امپلوید هستن، نفرایی که سلف امپلوید هستن، با خود سوپر بدی تکس هایتان کم میشه. یعنی که موشت و پولتان کمتر میشه. I'm going to switch back to English now, sorry, because it's a lot easier. That was my barrier. But yeah, so self-managed super fund, essentially what that does, it gives you control of your own super. Rather than giving your super to a retail super fund to invest that for you in a lot of different things, whether that gives you a return or not, that's a whole different story. But at least with the self-managed super fund, you control everything. Alright, so what is super? Alright, so quick rundown is when you work for someone else, they have to contribute 11% of your income into your superannuation, right? That basically is designed so when you do retire, you've got money to live off. And that you don't actually go to the government, hey, give me money, right? You've got your own money to actually live off. Yeah. Whatever that means. Sorry. Yeah. But there is restrictions. The money goes into your super account, you can't take it back out. Once it's in there, it's in there. The only time you can take it back out is when you retire or when you die and your family becomes happy. Alright? Because they get your money. Alright? Now, how does it work? Alright, so retail super funds, they usually get your money, my money, this guy's money, everybody's money, and they put it all together. And they invest it. They invest it in 3 different ways. They invest it in a growth strategy, which basically means high risk, high rewards, like international shares. They get your money from your super, and they buy American bonds. If American bonds takes a hit, you take a hit. And all they're gonna say is sorry. That's it. But, and then again, it does have high returns. If it bounces up, you get a better return. But a recent example, Donald Trump's tariffs. If everybody checks their superannuation accounts, 10% hit. All of you's lost 10%. Then you've got a balanced approach, right? Which is moderate risk, so it's a moderate risk. Maybe I should have said that in Napier. Moderate risk, but moderate returns. So not too risky, but at the same time, not too much returns. Conservative, same thing, low risk, low returns, right? But that's all you got control over. You tell your retail, those are the 3 options you've got. You can't decide to buy a property with it. You can't decide to invest in gold. You can't decide to invest in shares. You can't decide to get into term deposits. You've got no control. So, does the system actually work? Let's find out.
Economic travesty. At the ABC, we've analysed numbers going back to 1997. and across the
relying on their super to provide them with a decent retirement. But an investigation by the ABC has found that returns across the entire superannuation system are woeful, barely beating inflation. Stephen Long has the story.
It was Paul Keating's vision, build the savings to make workers secure in their retirement. But over the past dozen years, the returns from the superannuation system have been chipped away.
It's not just bad for people's pensions, it's an absolute economic travesty.
At the ABC, we've analysed numbers going back to 1997. And across the entire pot of money in the super system, the average yearly return has been just 3%. That's barely ahead of the inflation rate over that time, and a lot less than you would have got for cash in the bank. Over that period, the size of the pot has almost quadrupled, but most of the increase, the vast bulk, has come from contributions, our money going in, not the money making money. There's a host of factors behind.
So I'll stop it there. So as that sort of the ABC report is, I will show you, and I will show the whole sort of link later on, and you guys can watch it in your own time. But it basically is saying is that the super that they've collected, they're not really making money on it for you. It's your own contributions that's making the money increase, right? Their return of 1 to 3%, they bill you on it, they charge you fees on it, and they basically eat away at your own super fund, your own superannuation funds. And majority of the times, if you actually do look at your own super, right, if you don't actually work, your balance will come down. Even though supposedly they're meant to be investing it for you to increase it. So when you do retire, you've got something to live off. But let's just ignore the returns. Let's just hypothetically say, don't worry about the returns. My contributions to increase and add to my sort of retirement fund. But what control do you have it? Right? Let's see what the controls are.
Arriving with a rule book and a warning.
And we'll be watching.
ASIC puts Australia's $4.1 trillion superannuation industry on notice for ripping off grieving families.
Super funds need to do better when it comes to the handling of death benefit claims.
Scrutiny of 10 super companies found not one tracked claims from start to finish. The fastest fund only processed half within 90 days. The slowest dealt with just 8% in a timely manner. One fund taking more than 4 years to do the right thing. 78% of delays were intentional or avoidable. More than a quarter failed basic customer service.
Things like calls that were not returned or queries that were dismissed.
The worst two performers are already being sued by ASIC.
We don't rule out the possibility of more court cases.
In another example of poor customer service,
I'll stop that there as well. But essentially, so not only do you have not control over the super fund whilst you're alive, when you pass away, they're not going to process your claims until 90 days after. Imagine what your family's going through. They need that money, but they can't access it. They don't get no customer service, no return calls, nothing. So what's the point of going with them, right? That's where a self-managed super fund comes into place, right? A self-managed super fund is a super fund you manage. You get your accountant like Dara to open that up for you, and your super comes in and you manage it the way you want to. Beautiful thing about it as well is you can put it together with up to 6 members of your own family. So rather than just my 20,000 in my super trying to make me a little bit of money here and there, but my 20,000, George's 50,000, if we're a family of course, and someone else's family, whatever, we'll put them all together. Let's just say we've got now 400,000. Or 400,000, we can buy a property with that, can't we? We can do something more better with it. Rather than just letting someone else handle it, I want to handle it. You've got more variety of investments, right? Not just property, but shares, term deposits, gold, right? Go buy gold with your super. Let it build up for you. The value's been going through the roof at the moment anyways.
I've got an Iranian monastery.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine saying my super bought this and come in with the whole golden dress. There is of course ATO rules that you do have to follow. There is regulations, but that's where Tyra and your planner or your financial advisor will come into play. They'll make sure that you stay within the rules, but still maximize from everything else, or get returns from everything else. So why people set up an SMSF? We've already said that's going to be more control, but the ability to invest directly into property. So beforehand you would have a share of a property. This time you can actually buy it yourself, right? Pay it off whilst you work, because all you need for it to service or to work is the rent and your contributions. The contributions you have to make anyways. The rent you're going to get anyway because it's going to be an investment. And if that covers it, you're fine. By the time you retire, you've already got another paid off property, and you can then transfer it into your own name. You can do tailored tax planning and estate planning. So essentially for, making sure when you do, let's just say, pass away, right, that your wishes are sort of follow, people actually follow. So rather, for example, you've got a dog or something, or you've got something saying, my daughter needs to get this much amount of money, right? With a retail super fund, there's not really that much legal thing to push it to actually happen. What's with an SMSF? It's binding, it's contracted, it has to happen. So there's no dispute.
Yeah. For example, you buy from your super fund like a $1 million property, and then during the 10 years time, it double, as George explained earlier.
Yeah.
And then when you sell it back, how much tax you have to pay out of the profit of that?
Yeah. So there'll be capital gains tax involved, which we'll talk about later on as well, but capital gains tax. And if you do want to, let's just say you want to buy yourself after you retire, so like you bought it under your SMSF,
yes.
Yeah, and you want to sell it within whilst you're still working, you can sell it off, absolutely. Whatever gains.
Let's say after 10 years.
Yeah, after 10 years you sell it. There is a capital gains on it, so there is a tax on it, but then you would have to sort of buy another property if you want, or you can invest it another way. But there is tax implications there, but it's a lot less than if you do it for your own sort of way.
Roughly how much?
I would say 15% for company tax, 15% for company tax. Right? If you did it yourself, like let's just say I bought an investment property and then 10 years I sold it, my taxes on it would be like 35%. So through self-managed super fund, it's a lot easier. Now we come into what kind of properties you can buy. Right? We already talked about homes, but for some people here, your guys are self-employed, right? You've got shops of your own. Use your super money to buy the shop that you currently rent out from someone else. Rather than giving the rent to the landlord, give rent to your own super, right? The shops are not going to be that expensive if you pull them together with other people as well. Buy the shop that you're actually working out of and rent it to yourself, right? Now, it does have to be investment properties. You can't actually reside in it. Yes.
Can we sell that shop we took before we retired?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then-
There is tax there involved.
Then we can take out that super then.
No, you can't.
No.
You can buy and sell within self-managed super fund, but it's not tangible money. You can't
take it out.
You can sell it and buy again and just
within the same cup.
Yeah.
Like under the same roof.
So that self-managed super fund is, if you think about it, it's like a person of its own, right? Until you retire, then that person gives you all the benefits. So it does have to be investment purposes, so no owner occupied, so you can't buy through that property and actually live in it. You have to rent it out. All income have to be paid into the self-managed super fund as well. So any rent you get, any benefits that you get from that investment property has to go back into the super, right? But the other benefit is there is thresholds. So for example, in an SMSF, if you reach a certain threshold of 125,000 at this current stage, contributions into super, the rest you can take. Yeah. So capital gains tax, we would have talked about it a little bit more, but after her, I think we'll do some in her section. But yeah, so after you retire, now you've got this property, you bought it within your self-managed super fund. You've retired, and you want that house now. You want to take it out. Easy, just transfer it into your name. The only difference you have to do, it is subject to, like I said, like stamp duty, transfers of names and all that stuff. There's still some like fees and legalities that you do have to go through, and like proper valuation, of course, and all that stuff. And there's a bit of that like stamp duty, depending on the state, does come into play. But the process of it is a lot quicker. It's a lot easier to just transfer it into your name, rather than going through the whole process of buying a new property.
And also, you can do salary sacrifice as well.
Absolutely, absolutely you can. And the quicker and that salary sacrifice means less tax for you. Rather than,
you pay less tax by contributing more
to your super.
To your super.
Yeah. You pay off the house a little bit faster, let that build up a little bit more, buy another property within your self-managed super fund. And that's where Jason's going to come into play as well. Because that's not one of the number one thing that people use to buy units with is self-managed super funds. So things to consider: capital gains tax, right? Stamp duty, and timing does matter. So you can't lie to the government that you're retiring at 50. All right, you do have to actually work until retirement age until you get it.
With the personal contribution, government top up still?
So the government puts something in place called super guarantee, which basically means your employer needs to pay 11%. So you pay 11%, and whatever you want to put on extra, you can as well.
Yeah, but how much government top up on the personal contribution?
None, because you'd be making your own sort of contribution. So it's 11% is your employer. Whatever you want to put on top, you can put on top.
But government doesn't do before government
We used
do.
to top it up, but it's not tangible for you. It's within the year's coronation.
Oh, now it's stop.
For you to understand how much top, you need to ask the summary.
But it's the smart things to do.
Yeah.
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 It's form of appreciation and encouragement.
So when should you actually do it, right? So when you should actually do it is when you have a super balance of 150,000 to 200,000, whether that is in one name, joint names, or a group of names, whatever it is, that is one of the best times to do it. When you really want to buy a property inside the super, so resident commercial, they'll be the best options for you guys. Gold and the rest of them, absolutely you can do it, but again, there's rules around that, so you gotta be really careful. You do have someone to actually manage it for you, so an accountant or a planner. Make sure you have that involved. Unless you're very smart with SMSFs and you know what you're doing, then absolutely manage it yourself. But employ someone like Tahara to sort of help out and manage it for yourself.
How much will it charge you if they create an SMS safe for you?
Tahara, what's your going rate for SMSFs? There's a discount for this seminar.
You don't like my rates, so
Yeah.
it really depends. Like different accountants charge different rates, but ours is the same setup and arrangement. It's $1,650. It's the same as the company. Yeah, $1,650.
And that is just a one-off, right?
Yeah.
If you were to go inside a retail fund, you're paying between 1 to 3% of your balance. So one-off fee or an annual fee. And you can even pass on control to other people. So for example, if you want that self-managed super fund, so for example, there's 3 people involved, one person passes away, the other 2 people can still push it forward, still move it forward, and make sure that the rest of the family is taken care of. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many of you have super?
Thank God. The rest of you, please get super. You need some money when you retire.
Because they always say, who guarantees that I'll be alive if I have to pay my superannuation? So they don't pay for super.
Yeah.
Alright.
No. Do you have a question?
Is it a good idea to have super because we don't need money when we are retired?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
No, you do need money when you retire. What happens when the government doesn't want to help you
I need
anymore?
that 11% now, I'm not.
Oh yeah, sorry. Would you actually think? Yeah, but the thing is, it's if you keep going the way it is, let's just say the difference between the two. So you're a retail super fund, you probably will retire with like 250,000 maybe, and it's not guaranteed how long you're gonna live. So let's just say you retire at 60 and you live until 80. 250,000 for 20 years. Is that enough?
But then you can't cash it.
You can't.
You have the government benefit, we can use that.
Yeah, if you go to your government and go, hey, give me money, doesn't mean they're going to give you enough to survive, right? Whilst with my self-managed super fund, if I retire,
You
right?
do have one.
Huh?
You do have one.
Yeah. So with my self-managed super fund, I might have 700,000. Whilst you can only go holiday once a year, I'm going to go holiday every time whenever I feel like, right?
What do you do on that time when you're retired?
I'll go bowling. I'll go fishing. But yeah, no other questions?
Could you please give us some information about the land tax, how it works?
Yeah, so it's capital gains tax. So what
A
happens?
land tax. A land tax, not a capital gain.
Yeah, we do want to know what land tax.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
I think they have multiple
That's more
investment
time.
property.
You get away from item.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you can switch.
Yeah, all good, perfect. Alright guys, we'll take maybe a quick break whilst I switch
Yeah, that's
it.
fine.
Go please take some food before it goes cold. And yeah, there's drinks as well over there as well.
Thanks.